Hey everyone, and welcome back. Imagine having an AI agent that doesn't just answer your questions, but can actually use your computer, run commands, work with tools. Remember what it has learned and get better at repeating the same kind of task. And now imagine that you don't have to keep explaining everything to it from scratch every time. That's the idea behind Hermes Agent. But Hermes isn't just another AI chatbot with a fancy interface. Underneath it is an entire architecture designed around agents, tools, memory, skills, goals, and continuous improvement. So in this video, we're going to take a complete look at Hermes Agent. I'll break down how the architecture works, how you set it up, where the agent actually runs, how memory and skills work. And finally, the self-improving loop that makes Hermes particularly interesting. By the end, you'll have a much clearer picture of what Hermes actually is, and why this approach could be very different from simply chatting with an AI model. Let's get into it. The architecture at a high level. Hermes isn't just a chatbot sitting inside a terminal. It is an agent system built around several pieces working together: the model, tools, memory, skills, context management, messaging gateways, scheduling, and the terminal environment where the agent actually performs its work. The important thing is that these pieces aren't isolated. The model is basically the brain. The tools give Hermes the ability to interact with the outside world. The terminal backend determines where those commands and scripts actually run. And memory and skills allow knowledge from previous work to survive beyond a single conversation. That's what starts making Hermes feel less like a chatbot and more like an actual digital worker. Setup. Now let's talk about setup. Hermes can run on Linux, macOS, WSL Bower, Windows, and even Android through Termux. The installation process gets you through the initial configuration where you can set up your model provider, tools, and other components. And one thing I particularly like about this architecture is that you're not necessarily locked into one AI model. Hermes can work with different providers and endpoints so you can change the model without rebuilding your entire agent. And that matters because the model is only one part of the system. You might want one model for complex reasoning, another for vision, another for background tasks, or even a local model for certain workloads. The agent framework sits around those models and gives them a consistent environment to actually do things. Where does Hermes run? Then we get to one of the most important architectural decisions. Where does Hermes actually execute its work? You can run commands locally or use isolated environments and remote execution backends. That means you can build a simple personal assistant on your own machine, or move the agent onto a VPS or cloud environment and let it keep working while you're away. And this is where messaging becomes interesting. Instead of constantly sitting inside the terminal, Hermes can connect through messaging platforms and gateways. So you could send the agent a task from your phone and let it work somewhere else. That changes the experience quite a bit. You're no longer thinking about Hermes as a program you have to constantly open. You're starting to treat it more like an employee that happens to live inside your infrastructure. Memory and skills, but the feature that really makes Hermes interesting is what happens after the task is finished. Most AI agents have a very short memory. You solve a problem today, close the conversation, and tomorrow, the agent essentially starts from scratch. Hermes tries to break that cycle using persistent memory and procedural knowledge. Think about it like this. Memory tells Hermes what it has learned about you and previous work. Skills tell Hermes how to perform recurring tasks, and over time, those skills can be created and improved based on experience. This is where the self-improving loop comes in. The self-improving loop. Imagine you give Hermes a complicated task. It has to research something, use several tools, make a few decisions, and eventually produce the result. After enough activity, Hermes can use reflection to look back at what happened. And the question becomes, is there anything here worth remembering or turning into a reusable procedure? If the answer is yes, that knowledge can become persistent memory or a skill. So the next time you ask for something similar, Hermes doesn't necessarily have to rediscover the entire process from scratch. It can reuse what it learned. And this is a really important distinction. The AI model itself isn't magically becoming a completely different model every time you use Hermes. Instead, the system around the model is accumulating useful experience. That's a much more practical way of thinking about self-improvement. Skill maintenance, but there's another problem. If an agent keeps creating skills forever, eventually you're going to end up with a giant pile of outdated, duplicated, or contradictory instructions. So self-improvement can't simply mean create more skills. It also has to mean maintain the skills you already have. Hermes includes mechanisms for reviewing and maintaining its skill library, including usage information and background curation. And honestly, this is one of the less flashy parts of an AI agent architecture. But it's incredibly important, because a system that remembers everything isn't necessarily intelligent. Sometimes intelligence means knowing what to keep and what to throw away. Persistent goals. Hermes can also work with persistent goals. Instead of giving the agent a task that ends with a single response, you can give it an objective that survives across turns. The agent can then evaluate whether that objective has actually been completed. If it hasn't, it can continue working toward it. That creates a very different workflow. Instead of fix this project, then keep going, then you missed this. You can give the agent a persistent objective and let the system continue working toward the result. And that is where Hermes starts moving beyond the traditional chatbot experience. The bigger picture, but there's an important warning. Self-improvement doesn't mean you should blindly let an AI rewrite everything without supervision. A skill can be wrong, a workflow can encode a bad assumption, and an agent can become very good at doing the wrong thing. So the best way to use Hermes is still to keep meaningful human oversight, especially for sensitive actions, production systems, financial decisions, and anything destructive. The real power comes from combining autonomy with good guardrails. Outro, and that's really the bigger idea behind Hermes. It's not simply about making an AI model smarter. It's about building a system around that model that can remember, use tools, learn procedures, execute tasks, and keep working toward objectives. And once you look at Hermes this way, the architecture starts making a lot more sense. The model provides the intelligence, the tools give it capabilities, memory, skills give it reusable knowledge, goals give it direction. And the self-improving loop allows the entire system to become more useful over time. The model may change, the tools may change, your workflows will definitely change. But the agent can accumulate something much more valuable experience. And that could be one of the biggest differences between today's AI assistants and the AI agents we're going to be using over the next few years. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe to the channel because we're going much deeper into the new generation of AI agents, local AI, automation, and the infrastructure that's being built around them. And I'll see you in the next one.